Racist cop tries to humiliate black student and gets shocked by detective mom. Marcus Carter never forgot the sound of those sirens. 1 minute, he was walking home from basketball practice. The next, flashing lights pinned him against the darkness of his own neighborhood. The officer stepped out, tall and smug, hand resting on his holster like it was part of his skin. His eyes didn't see a student in gym shorts and sneakers. They saw a suspect. You. Stop right there. Marcus froze, sweat dripping down his temple. He had nothing to hide, but in that moment, nothing to prove his innocence seemed enough either. And what happened in the next 15 minutes would expose more than just racial profiling. It would uncover a truth the officer never saw coming. Before I tell you how this night changed everything, hit subscribe right now and stay until the end. Because the ending will shock you, and the lesson is one we all need to hear. The officer circled Marcus like a predator. "What's in the bag?" he demanded. "Basketball gear, sir," Marcus replied softly. His voice cracked, the way voices do when fear squeezes the throat. The cop snatched the bag, dumping it onto the hood of his cruiser. A basketball rolled into the gutter, a pair of sneakers thudding beside it. Harmless. Ordinary. But the officer's smirk said otherwise. "Looks like stolen goods to me." He sneered loud enough for the small crowd gathering on the sidewalk to hear. Laughter trickled from somewhere behind. People passing by whispered. Some pulled out their phones. And there Marcus stood, cheeks burning with humiliation, treated like a criminal for existing. "Empty your pockets." Marcus obeyed. Out came a folded bus pass, a house key, a crumpled $5 bill. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. Yet the officer narrowed his eyes, leaning close enough for Marcus to smell the bitter tang of coffee on his breath. "You people always find ways to hide things," he muttered. Those words sliced deeper than any handcuffs. They weren't just aimed at Marcus. They were aimed at every boy who looked like him. Marcus wanted to speak up, to fight back. But he remembered his mother's warnings. Keep calm. Keep breathing. Your dignity is stronger than their hate. So he swallowed the anger, even as humiliation burned like acid inside him. Then, the officer pushed harder. "You think you're tough? Think you can mouth off?" Marcus shook his head. "No, sir." But the crowd was watching, and cruelty always wants an audience. The officer shoved Marcus against the hood. The slam echoed like a gunshot. Gasps broke from the onlookers. One woman shouted, "He's just a kid." But no one moved closer. Marcus clenched his jaw. His arms trembled as the officer pressed him down. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. But he stayed still, praying it would end soon. What the officer didn't know was that Marcus's mother, Detective Renee Carter, was only 2 blocks away. She had been working undercover for weeks, building a case against a drug ring tearing through the community. Tonight, she was heading home early. When her phone buzzed with a neighbor's frantic message, "They've got your son pulled over," her world tilted. Renee's car screeched to a stop. She sprinted toward the flashing lights, her badge hidden beneath her jacket, but her fury blazing brighter than any siren. She saw her son pinned like prey, fear carved across his face. And she saw the officer, the same one who had been flagged for complaints before, grinning as though this humiliation was his sport. "Get your hands off my boy." The voice cracked through the night like thunder. Everyone turned. Detective Carter stepped into the circle of light, her presence commanding, her eyes sharp as steel. The officer straightened. "Ma'am, this is police business." She ripped open her jacket, flashing the badge on her chest. "And I am police business. Detective Carter, Internal Affairs. You just made the worst mistake of your career." The crowd erupted in whispers. Phones lifted higher, capturing every second. The officer's smug grin faltered, but pride wouldn't let him back down. "He fit the description," he muttered. Her voice cut through him. "The only description he fits is black and breathing. And you thought that was enough to treat him like an animal." The air grew heavy. The officer stammered. "I was doing my job." "Your job is to protect, not profile," Renee snapped. "To serve, not shame." Marcus lifted his head, eyes wide. For the first time that night, hope stirred in his chest. His mother wasn't just saving him. She was dismantling the lie the officer had built around him. One by one, bystanders began to speak. "He didn't do anything. He was just walking home. You targeted him." The officer's face drained of color. His authority was slipping, leaking out with every camera flash and every voice that refused to stay silent. But Renee wasn't finished. She pulled out a file she had carried for weeks, thick with evidence. You thought this was about a student with a basketball bag, but it's about you. Your record, your complaints, your history of targeting boys who look like my son. The officer's eyes widened. He hadn't expected exposure. Not here, not now. Marcus's heart pounded. He had gone from prey to witness of his mother's strength. And the crowd leaned in, hungry for justice. The balance of power had shifted. The officer tried to speak, but his words stumbled. You can't. I can, Renee interrupted. And I will. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. The crowd was waiting for justice. And Marcus, he finally stood taller. For the first time that night, he felt the weight of dignity replacing the chains of humiliation. By the end of that night, Marcus walked home with his mother beside him, no longer just a detective, but his shield, his proof that silence can be broken. The officer? He was left trembling in the headlights, his career dangling by a thread. But justice is never a straight line. And what Marcus and his mother didn't know was that the officer wasn't finished. Some truths buried deep in the department were about to surface, and they were darker than anyone imagined. Because the next time the Carters crossed paths with this cop, the stakes would be life and death. The days after that night were anything but quiet. Word of the incident spread fast. The video of Marcus pinned to the squad car, his mother's badge flashing like lightning in the dark, had gone viral. People shared it in anger, in outrage, and in hope. But inside the police department, whispers grew louder. Some officers applauded Renee for standing her ground. Others saw her as a traitor who had embarrassed one of their own. And the man at the center of it all, the cop who tried to humiliate Marcus, was not ready to let go of his pride. Detective Renee Carter knew she had stirred a hornet's nest. She had seen it in the sideways glances at the precinct, in the files that suddenly disappeared from her desk, in the messages slipped into her mailbox with no signature. Watch yourself. You don't belong here. But she had faced storms before, and she knew storms don't destroy, they reveal. Marcus, however, carried his own storm inside. He walked the halls of school, with every whisper chasing him. Some praised him for standing strong. Others mocked, echoing the officer's words. Fits the description. The wound of humiliation had not healed. One evening, Renee found Marcus staring at the viral video on his phone, the freeze frame of his face pressed against the squad car. He whispered, "Mom, what if that's all people see me as now?" Her heart broke, but her voice stayed steady. They will see what you decide to become, not what he tried to make you. But what neither of them knew was that the officer had filed a false report, claiming Marcus had resisted arrest, claiming Renee had interfered unlawfully. Lies, crafted carefully, meant to silence the truth. When Internal Affairs called Renee into a hearing, the room felt colder than winter. 3 men sat behind a table, files stacked high. The officer smirked from his seat, his lawyer whispering in his ear. "Detective Carter," one investigator began, "serious allegations have been made against you. Abuse of authority, interference, conduct unbecoming." The weight of the words pressed down, but Renee lifted her chin. "And what about the truth? The video? The witnesses?" The officer leaned back, smug again. "Video doesn't show everything. People will believe me. They always do." For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then Renee laid a folder on the table. Not this time. Inside that folder was more than evidence. It was a record of years of complaints, statements from Black teenagers, mothers, fathers, each echoing the same story of humiliation and targeting. Cases buried, reports shredded, voices ignored. Renee had dug deep, piecing together the puzzle they tried to hide. She looked straight into his eyes. "You thought you were untouchable, but your own past is what's going to end you." The investigators flipped through the files, their brows tightening. The smugness drained from the officer's face. For the first time, he looked afraid. The climax came swiftly. At a press conference days later, the truth exploded into the light. Reporters filled the room, cameras flashing like fireworks. The chief of police announced, after thorough investigation, Officer Daniel Whitmore is terminated effective immediately. Criminal charges will follow. Gasps spread. The same officer who once stood tall with arrogance now stood small, shielded by lawyers, drowning in shame. And in the crowd, Marcus finally saw justice not as a dream, but as reality. But Renee didn't smile in victory. Her words carried a heavier weight. To everyone who's ever been profiled, who's ever felt invisible, Know this: dignity cannot be stolen. Justice may bend, but it doesn't break. And silence only ends when someone dares to speak. The applause was thunderous. Some cried, some cheered, but everyone understood. This was bigger than one boy, one mother, one cop. It was about a system that needed light and the courage of those willing to shine it. That night, as Marcus walked home beside his mom, the air felt different. For the first time since that terrible evening, his shoulders relaxed. "Mom," he whispered, "you saved me." She shook her head. "No, son. We saved each other." And in the shadows, neighbors stepped out, clapping, nodding, showing solidarity. The community that once stayed silent was finally raising its voice. The moral is simple. Prejudice can try to strip away dignity, but truth has a way of fighting back. One voice can start a ripple, but many voices together can create a wave strong enough to wash injustice away. And before you go, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of justice, resilience, and truth. Because the more we share these stories, the louder our voices become.